And now, it's time for coffee and conversation with Dr. Wayne.
Hello, Dr. Wade here. Welcome to my podcast. This is our first podcast with some guests, coffee and conversation. We have Hannah and Hunter from It's in Your Head. So we're going to be talking a little bit about their lives and their company and how they came to be. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for having us.
Excellent. All right. So the first question I have, I think I like to go big. Who are you?
Take it away. This is all you.
Hello, I am Hannah Clingan, and I grew up here close to Danville in Covington. Studied psychology in school. We can dig a little bit more into that later on, but I just returned back to Danville a few months ago to assist Hunter with this work and in this life with It's in Your Head.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, and I'm Hunter Lafav, also from the area. I grew up here. I've been gone for 17 years. I got back a year ago to bring these services back here. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, happy to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to dive into your services, but what I would really like to do, I've met you a couple different times in a couple of different venues. Last time I saw you, you had talked a little bit about how you came to this particular way of thinking, lifestyle. And so I really just kind of like to open it up. If you can kind of give me some background on what did you do in that 17 years that led you back here to year one?
Yeah, so I moved down to, first Seattle and then Louisiana. Okay. I went to commercial dive school, so I became an underwater welder, is probably what people are more familiarized with knowing it as. But yeah, commercial diving school. So then I was down in Louisiana. I worked in the oil field for 11 years, partly as a diver for the majority of the years. And the last couple of years I worked as a deck foreman and crane operator. So a little in the Gulf of Mexico and then over in Singapore and in Brunei, Malaysia for a little bit. And then, then I got diagnosed with late stage cancer. And so the work was kind of done then, came back to take care of that. And that's really what started me on this path was, that's what kind of set me down and go, oh, you're not taking good care of yourself. We've been sending you some warning signals for a while and you ignored those. And now we're going to send you the last call here to kind of take care of things.
Final resolution.
Yeah.
So here you are, working all over the world. Sounds like exciting stuff, things that I would not do. But, underwater welding, I know I've talked about that sometimes. And like, there's only a certain group of people that would do underwater welding. Supposedly water or oxygen and fire don't play well together.
They play really well together.
Oh, they do? Oh, is that the problem? They play too well together.
They play too well together.
Okay, excellent. So underwater welding, different parts of the world, you get diagnosed with late stage cancer.
Yep.
Can you kind of just talk to me a little bit, like what was that initial, you mentioned like, my body was kind of giving me these warnings and then bam, I get this undeniable piece of information.
Exactly. So yeah, for the years leading up to that, kind of looking back, I had started to get depressed. I was getting really, really anxious, even like socially anxious, and I'm not a socially anxious person typically. I started getting kind of digestive issues, just feeling off, feeling kind of flat and drained. And so I had gone to therapy, I'd been put on all these medications, all this stuff. Stomach stuff started getting worse. And then I ended up passing blood. And that's when I was like, probably time to get this really, really checked out. They had say, oh, it could be this, it could be that. It's nothing. I'd been on every kind of medication for mood stabilization, antidepressants, and all this stuff. And nothing really seemed to help, and then my physical symptoms started getting worse. So not just like mental and emotional things, but my body started kind of breaking down a little bit, and that's when I felt like, oh, you've got a lot of cancer. Yeah.
Did they say it that way? Like a lot
Literally, I woke up. I got a colonoscopy. Woke up from anesthesia, like coming to out of this like anesthesia fog. The doctor was sitting over me and goes, "I'm not supposed to say this until the results get back in, but you have a lot of cancer. A lot of people are going to be calling you, and I'm really sorry." And walked out of the room. I'm like, "Can I wake up a little bit first? Can we get like a cup of coffee or maybe like?"
Yeah, who needs coffee after that information, right?
You're fully awake after that.
So, obviously, I don't know how old you were. How old were you at the time of this?
30.
30. Okay, so most likely that we don't tend to think of 30-year-olds and late-stage cancer.
Right.
Not saying that it's not possible. That's probably not the typical go-to. I guess the question I have, you kind of mentioned these mood changes, anxiety, digestive issues. Were you just too busy taking care of or trying to do what? Why did you ignore it?
There's these thoughts of just, I guess you're a little more like, be a tough guy, don't go to the hospital, probably just nothing, don't be, like, don't complain, it's whatever. And we just have this way of thinking of like, oh, our bodies break down really, really early. Like I've got friends that are like, yeah, I'm on heartburn medication, but there's like, you're 28 years old. Like are you not shocked at that? Like that's not supposed to happen. But like, oh, other people I know are doing it too. So I think that was a lot of it, was just this, that's how things are. Your body starts to fall apart. You're going to have these issues. It's whatever, kind of suck it up. I had a poor way of looking at things back then. Yeah.
Well, that's a good starting point. So you come back to the States. I'm assuming you did treatment here.
Yeah, so I got diagnosed. That was kind of the end of my work in the way I was doing it then. And then, I did 40 rounds of chemo and 28 rounds of radiation. I think I had like 7 surgeries, including like an emergency heart surgery. I had the ostomy bag. I had that fall apart and prolapse, and my gut started falling out, and all kinds of, exciting surgeries to go with it. But
yeah, I don't know that exciting would be the word that I would attach to that experience, but okay. So you get, obviously you got through treatment. Yeah. Okay. You get was it a clean bill of health or a partial clean bill of health? Yep. What'd you do then?
So I had actually kind of in the middle of it, between my first, I did 28 rounds. It's supposed to be all I was supposed to do of chemo and radiation. And I had 6 weeks off there before I went to my first set of surgery. I was supposed to be done, but I was so stressed. I knew I don't think I'm going to like get through this surgery because of the amount of stress I was under. So not only was it cancer, it was also some things going on in my personal life. I just recently lost like 3 of my best friends had died. My mom wasn't doing all that well. I was going through a breakup. There was a lot of things, and then getting sick. I kind of lost my career, so a lot of really, really big shifts all at once at the beginning. So I'd gone out to Thailand to go clear my head. I don't know why I chose Thailand. I don't know why I picked a yoga meditation retreat. I grew up here, and then I was in the oil field. There wasn't like there was a lot of opportunity for me to learn about yoga or meditation or mindfulness in any way. But I thought that's going to be the place where I get the most relaxation. And so I kind of sought it out. I think I did 20 minutes of research, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and found this place, had good reviews, found decent ticket prices, and bought it. And
Yelp was all right with them.
yeah, solid.
They had a good solid Yelp review. Yeah. Like, well, they're a 4 out of 5. Yeah. Let's. What I think too is, this idea of, you kind of mentioned this idea of you got like this 6 weeks between, you've done obviously this very intrusive treatment. You're stressed, and the plan is to come back and do more intrusive treatment. And so maybe 20 minutes was all you could really afford to do research before you had to do something.
Also, my brain was so slow at the time, so I could handle the physical symptoms fairly well. The sickness, the pain, that kind of stuff didn't bother me as much as the kind of like mental side of it. So I had really, really bad chemo fog. I had a difficult time even figuring out like how to dress myself in the morning. I'd wake up and be like, okay, it's morning time. What do I do? Breakfast. Well, what can I make for breakfast? And I'd sit there and I'd hold the thing of oats in a pan. I'd start crying because I'm like, I have no idea how to turn this into food. So I had a really hard time with the mental side of it more than anything else. So when I was trying to make a decision, it was hard for me to weigh the options and look at prices. Something as simple as going to the grocery store to get peanut butter. I would have to go in a hoodie so I could cry because there's 20 different kinds of peanut butter. Do you want small, big, the no stir? Do you want it with nuts? And I just freak out because it was so many options. My brain couldn't put it together. So the thought of planning an international trip and all this was, I just didn't have the ability to put much more thought than that into it.
Excellent. Okay. So you go off, you do this retreat. You go to Thailand, you do this retreat. You were there for how long?
I was only there for, I think I was at Swansati for 10 days, and then I had a couple days in Chiang Mai.
Okay. So 2 weeks, you're gone.
Yep.
Do you return back to the States?
I came back, and then it was like less than a week. I think maybe like 4 or 5 days later, I went into surgeries. And so that's when they found out I was still stage 3 after that. I was supposed to be done, but I started to meet tumor. So that's why we ended up doing another 12 rounds after that through a port. And that's where it got pretty gnarly. That was a lot rougher.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you come back expecting, this last series of treatment. I'm assuming you're a little blindsided by, they're like, all right, so this stuff it's not done. Yeah. Welcome to the second side of the hill.
Yeah.
What was your perspective like when you came back? Like when you came back from this retreat, where were you at? Emotionally, mentally.
I had never felt that calm in my life. I had never felt that confident that I understood what I wanted out of life. I never felt that accepted and loved and supported as I did there. And so you have this idea I'm going to come back to the States and it's just, nothing's going to bother me. I'm going to be all great. And I think I was coming back. I might have had a layover in London, I think, and then landed in LAX and got in there. And I was immediately like, oh, it's not going to go the way I think it is. It's just the intensity of coming back to the States, the general mindset, attitude, and just the intensity that people live in the U.S. was really hard to adjust. And I think I still kind of struggle with that, this constantly wanting more and needing to get more and never being satisfied, and that constant climb, kind of weighed on me. And being over there, people are much more at peace, and they're much calmer, they're much just happy with what they have, and it's a slower, simpler life. I really, really appreciated that. Yeah, so it was quite a shock coming back. Yeah.
Well, I think too is, and I don't know, and I would obviously kind of defer to you to kind of answer this, but the idea of gaining that new perspective, even if it was just momentarily, to be hit with this whole other reality that I went to get baselined to kind of reprioritize my life, and I come back and everything I thought I was preparing for was not actually what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Did you lean back into what you had learned when you were over doing those retreats? Was it hard to get back to that mindset here and relax? And
more than anything, it taught me the necessity of self-care and daily practice. Okay. I think before going out there, I had thought people were either just happy or they weren't. You're either a calm person or you weren't a calm person. And then what I learned was it's directly related to how much effort you put into it, and how much thought and time you put into feeling your best is how you get to feel. So it was a constant back and forth of really being on my stuff and having my daily habits and eating right and spending time around the quality people and what I watched on TV. And when I had all that right, things were going well. And then typically with me, it's like kind of cyclical. So when things start going well, you're like, oh, I can kind of get off of it a little bit. I'm doing good. And then I'd remember why I do all those things and have to get back into it. So I think I was really stubborn. So it always takes me a long time to get into something new because I am pretty bullheaded. But
well, I think it's kind of an interesting idea because there's so much, just the American, or even I could even say the industrialized nation culture of, I did this thing, why am I not mastering it yet?
Yeah.
I spent a weekend like listening to the guy and why have I not conquered the thing that they've been working on for thousands of years?
Yeah, I know better. Why am I still making it? Yeah, and then you beat yourself up for not being perfect after this. And
I just got over the fact you guys don't speak my language, and now I have to master your entire. Welcome to American culture. Like, you go on vacation.
a little bit,
We go on vacation. They're upset when they're not us.
Yeah.
So you have this, obviously, you have this new thing, you have this new reality, or actually I would just say more intensified reality of what you left. You come back, you've gotten kind of this new perspective, you're gonna do these surgeries, so we're probably gonna jump forward and then we're gonna jump back, if that's okay. Yep. So you get through the next series of surgeries, the heart surgery, the rounds of additional treatment. Mm-hmm. Here you are. Now you're at a clean bill of health.
Yeah.
What was your first initial thought? Like, all right, you said I'm good. Did you have a thought about returning back to your old life?
No, not really. I think there was that thought of like, oh, I got to support myself, and this is the only way I know how to do it. Being able to make fire underwater, or, put on a platform a couple 100 feet down with basically your eyes closed is not a transferable skill. You can't like, oh yeah, and now I do computer stuff with that. It's like, it's kind of, that's what you're good at. There's not really another place for that.
What'd you do in your last job? I tried not to get blown out. Yeah. And now I make coffee. So
that was, but I at least had awareness at that point of like, oh, this wasn't working for me. I feel really, really fortunate that I got to have a career and make a lot of money and do a lot of things and experience it all and realize that doesn't make you happy. There's I can't believe I always say this, but there's a Kanye quote that says, I know, everybody keep their, don't judge me on this, but it's a really nice quote. This is early Kanye. This is not new Kanye. But he said, having money's not everything, but not having it is. So if you're not making money, if you don't have enough to pay your bills, of course that's the most important thing to you. But once you get it and you have it and you're at a comfortable place, you realize like, oh, this chase that I was searching for, this thing that I've been working for so many years is not bringing me the happiness and peace that I was hoping it would.
Yeah, the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, and I think we get caught up in the, I'm getting ready to turn 40. No, wait, I am 40. God, Jesus. I'm getting ready to turn 42. You can edit that one out, guys. So I'm lost my best friend. He was in his mid-30s, and my health was very poor. And I know over the last 3 years, it's really just been conscious daily choices. I used to set these big, giant, like, oh, I'm going to do this, and then you fail. I'm going to gym every day, and you don't go at all. Yeah. And so I want to kind of jump a little bit further. So you figure out you got this thing to offer. You think you have found a good piece of wisdom, I'm assuming. I probably shouldn't use the word found because it wasn't lost. Right. You just hadn't gotten there yet. And so he became aware of it. It's like, I'm so glad I found it. It's like, dude, we were here. Yeah. Like we've been here the whole time.
The whole time, right?
So you start the company, I'm assuming. Where does Hannah come into this process?
Yeah, so it was a way that, so It's in Your Head started a couple years before, and it originally started as like the Bonfire Project. It was going to be a place where people could come and meet to talk, in a place that wasn't a hospital or someplace under fluorescent lighting, someplace where you could feel comfortable and just share your story, and people could kind of grow together. And then through some experiences that I had, I realized, what's the real struggle is what's going on inside of your head. It's in your head was from a Fiona Apple song. So he said, it's all in your head. I said, so is everything, but he didn't get it.
Should we explain to our younger audience
Who Fiona Apple is?
who Fiona Apple is?
I don't know Fiona Apple. Just
Google it.
Google it. She's
Google it.
Google it.
So,
But
listen with friends.
yeah. But yeah, so, and for those 3 years that I was traveling, it was just kind of, I was doing these services first as cancer coaching, and then I kind of wanted to get ahead of it and share this with everyone because I thought everyone could benefit from it. And then when I got done with traveling and got back into the States, I had ended up, between lockdown, I ended up in a couple of different countries, and there was only like a handful of places you could go in the world. Some of those got a little hostile, a little uncomfortable, so I ended up down in Mexico. I was like, well, in Mexico, come to the States. Going to come and visit my family up here in Illinois, and I wanted to run a 2-day retreat, was the original thing. I'd come to teach it. I taught a class, went back to Texas, and then I realized how needed this was up here. It was one thing to kind of teach this stuff while I was in travel, where people are kind of searching out these things. And then there's another thing to come and do this back here in the Midwest, where this isn't really a common practice. But to see the benefit that people get and how open they were to it, I was like, okay, this is where I need to be. Came back to run a 2-day retreat was my whole plan. And then I got this lovely lady that started following me on Instagram. I think we had like mutual friends. Maybe you can.
I had seen his promotion of the retreat. And at the time I was living in Indianapolis, working in kind of the health and wellness realm there. And I was like, yes, this man is like bringing these services to my hometown area. So I was like, yes, I can support that. Like, how can we work together in the future? So we just kind of started following each other and cheering each other on. And I think it was in January when you reached out to get coffee.
Nice.
And
Doesn't coffee bring the world together?
It does. And he drove through the snowpocalypse to come to Indy, and
That crazy snowstorm last year?
yeah, and he met me at City Yoga, which I was managing at the time, and it's a school of yoga and health, and yeah, we just connected and everything kind of lined up. Yeah, kind of shared the same vision, wanting to like help our hometown communities and like bringing this information home, and it was clear that we were really aligned in kind of our values and ideals. Even though we had 2 very different paths.
Yeah. She doesn't like to talk about her deep sea diving career.
Oh, you did? She didn't have a deep sea. You know, we can't all be divers, right? I did go snorkeling once. Didn't go well.
See, that terrifies me.
Snorkeling?
Snorkeling, I don't like it. Yeah. I don't like being at the surface of the water. I want to be in there with them. Yeah. Something about being at the surface, you're like, oh, you're outsider there, makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, so I have a feeling you're not like a test the water kind of guy. You're just jumping right in, just all in.
Is this too hot? Let me take a big gulp. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah,
you're an all-in person. And so Hannah, you're from the area, and you guys, I mean, as everyone connects, Instagram, bringing us all together. Yeah. What's your background? I mean, you mentioned that you kind of did this whole like wellness thing. So what was kind of going on pre-wellness, pre-hunter,
Let me catch you up.
in your head?
Okay. Let's see, I grew up again in Covington. I was very active as a child, athletically.
Okay.
Like I played every sport, I danced, I found very young, like I loved just being embodied. I went to college. I went to DePaul University in Greencastle, and my freshman seminar was the psychology of design. Okay. And so I learned a lot about actually how you design spaces and places and things and how that affects like the human psychology. I also took a course, consumer psychology.
Ooh, that's a good one.
My freshman year, which was also just enlightening about how marketers and how companies kind of exploit the human psychology to get them to buy their products and make them devoted customers. And so I was just very intrigued with psychology from the start. I had gone there with the intention of studying like media actually in communications, but it was very clear, like, nope, I am entranced by this idea of like human psychology. And I had struggled, despite being very successful in academics, in athletics, socially, I struggled with major depression. Like, I just had moments of deep sadness and days on end. And I knew that by societal standards, we were missing something, because I had succeeded in all these areas I'm told I'm supposed to succeed, but I was not happy. So yeah, very early on as a college student, I started that deep dive into my own kind of life purpose and what am I here for, and how can I kind of use my privilege to serve my community. That was always very clear to me, even as a child. Like, my dad worked hard and he was able to provide, enough to support me in all of my activities, and I could wear nice clothes to school, but I'd look around and I'd wonder, why a kid was wearing the same t-shirt day after day, and I thought, man, he looks comfortable. But but also I thought I did nothing to deserve what I had. And it was always very evident for me as a child that I was in a position of privilege in a small town, and I wanted to do something with that. So that kind of is the initial seeds that blossom for me as a young person. And after college, well, actually during college, I started personal training. I took a biopsychosocial health class.
Nice.
And a certified personal training course. And I made the connection pretty young on when I was moving my body regularly, when I was in a routine, I was eating well, and I was working toward my goals, I felt better than when I didn't. When I was kind of out of control and I was overeating or maybe drinking too much in college, like, that's when I noticed there's a direct connection between my mental health, and I kind of started putting those pieces together. And I competed actually in the Miss Indiana program for about 3 years, and there's a service platform. And so I established mine, and it was called Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies. And so very young, 2021, I was already talking in schools and to community people about mental health. And this was still, over 10 years ago. So this is really before a lot of the conversation started to come to the forefront. So this has kind of been my passion for a very long time. I actually went into the environmental science profession after college, worked for oil and gas and then major manufacturing companies. So I, dipped my toe into a different field there for a while, and I learned a lot about different industries, a lot about the United States, just traveling to different communities, and also about sustainability and conservation practices. But I knew that I wanted to make a difference on a more of a local scale. I knew that all that traveling, I was wasting so much of my energy just in the maneuvering of these situations, and I wasn't engaging with people and making real change. So I left that job, and I rooted myself in Indy for a few years, and I worked for a nonprofit called Growing Places Indy, which they were working on mind-body health, but mostly about environmental health. And we were growing up urban gardens within the community, especially low-income communities, to help teach them about nutrition and growing your own food and self-sustainability. And so I was really passionate about that. I worked for People for Urban Progress, and they were taking used materials and repurposing them to make new material. They'd sell bags and all sorts of different garments to make money for urban renewal projects. So I was really digging my hands into this Indianapolis community in all sorts of different manners. Did some sustainable landscaping for a while, just learning everything that I could. And then I came home. When I kind of came to the end of the line, for me, it was, what do I do with all of this? I'm kind of out of money, I'm out of funds, but I know there's something new I need to create, I need to birth. So I came home for a little over a year, and I actually worked for my dad in real estate and auctions. I'm a fourth generation auctioneer.
Nice. Do you have the
No, I'm a terrible auctioneer, but I am licensed to sell. Yeah, I never said I was good at it. I am licensed to sell though. Yeah, but I came home to kind of hit the reset button. I was like, what am I doing? Where am I going? and it kind of gave me the support that I needed. So I worked as a substitute teacher, I worked in real estate, I worked auctions, I was teaching yoga and fitness back around here. But I knew like it just wasn't quite hitting. So I found my way back to Indy. I worked for LifeStart Wellness, so they're a corporate wellness company nationally. And I helped kind of implement their first gym in Capitol Center Towers in downtown Indy and help that get open and the programs get going. I had spent a year as an NFL cheerleader, you know, so, and I had kind of inserted myself in that space because I knew it could give me a platform to speak out about these things. I knew that by plugging into a greater community, especially the NFL community, I could create a lot of connections and help influence people for the better and be able to talk about mental health. So that was very strategic, to be honest. It was an outstanding experience. But yeah, I ended up back in Indy. COVID shut everything down. And at the time I was kind of on my own, and it was scary, and just not knowing where to maneuver, where to go, not really having a support system in place. And that's really when I started struggling with anxiety. And I maneuvered to a different yoga studio. I helped them reopen, and then I landed at City Yoga and helped that community kind of revitalize. And within that time, it was just a lot of inner work, a lot of outer work. And I found Hunter at about the perfect time. And it was kind of when I was ready to come back home again. And I had more to share. And I was ready to kind of shift into that space of, okay, I'm going to lean into this work. And I found this partner that can stand beside me and can help push it forward.
Yes, that is one. No, I mean, I think too, extremely, inspirational. This idea of, I like the idea of, you kind of mentioned like going around the country and kind of, having these like, I like to refer to these kind of like small salt and pepper change. Mm-hmm. You give people, enough to maybe think about starting something, but by the time, they get around to starting something, I was talking with a colleague not too long ago, and I had no direction in my life whatsoever until I was in my mid-20s, and I found my field on accident for whatever reason. And I remember thinking, I was talking to someone, I remember thinking, one of my professors had asked me, do I want to work in the field or do I want to change the field?
That's one of those ones that just stick like, all right, thanks, dude.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. And so I responded to my professor and I said, well, I want to change the field by the work I do. Like, that there is this process of work that has to be put into place. This thing is not going to magically bring itself together. Mm-hmm. And so the idea, obviously I went on to grad school, and one of the things that I had a professor in graduate school tell me, so if you really want to create change and sustainable change and change that impacts generation after generation, you cannot be 2 miles wide and 1 inch deep. You have to be 1 inch wide and 2 miles deep. Like, you have to drill down and get these seeds into a place that they can, flourish, long past us. And I think that's one of the things that led me into teaching is I just felt like in my field I was just burning myself out. Like, I'm just like, time after time, I'm like, why don't we all do this? Why don't we all do this? And when I was working on my doctorate, I was like, I just need to teach so I can create other me's. Yeah. because it's like if no one's picking up what you're providing or sharing, I mean, how do we? It dies with us. And so the idea is like, I thought it was like, ooh, if I can just ingrain some of these ideas, there will be more of me's and people who hold my values and my philosophies and my attitudes towards how we should be and how we should work with one another. So I really appreciate that. I love the idea because I just roamed around forever. I tried to start a magazine. I wanted to be a music journalist, and I built out of 3 institutions, and found myself working at a for-profit hospital. And if you talk about soul draining, And so, yeah, so it's awesome to hear that though we do not all share the same path, there are similarities amongst us. So,
and I think that's the big thing that gets us excited is kind of that ripple effect. Those things that you'll never get to see. So if you can positively influence someone, if you can teach them these skills and this way of looking at things, and that's kind of the way we look at it's in your head is this half step before the first step. So, addressing these blocks that we have inside our minds, our belief systems, our responses to things, and this control. And then you learn all these other skills. You get to talk and work out things. But if you don't first address, if you don't believe that you can heal or that you deserve better, everything else is going to kind of fall on deaf ears. If you're not able to self-regulate your nervous system and slow down, you're going to be in that fight or flight response. And it's really, really hard to have all those things kind of catch on. So we get really, really excited about this idea of, you teach someone and then they go out into the world and they're less reactive. They're calmer. They're maybe a little more empathetic to others. And then you show by example to other people, in the kind of yoga world, they call like light workers or however you want to look at it. Just people that bring joy into places or at least don't magnify the craziness,
Don't make it worse.
Don't make it worse, because that's usually what it is someone's not doing well, someone else is not doing well, they meet, and then they think that problem is actually those two having a problem together, when it's actually that whole person's problems, your whole person's problems, and now you just have been met, and now you're putting it on somebody else kind of thing. So that's what gets us excited is these ripple effects later on that we're never going to get to see, we're never going to get to hear of, but just knowing that, people are changing and going off in different directions.
yeah, I remember, that's so funny to make me, I did a presentation one time and I thought I nailed it.
Yeah.
Just like, what's up, dude? And the person I was talking with after was like, well, how do you think it went? And I was like, well, I think it went all right. I think I nailed it.
Aced it.
And she's like, well, I don't know that you made it worse, but I don't think you made it better. And I'm like, where did I go wrong? But going back to kind of some of the things that you had mentioned, Hannah, is this idea of, in college, those feelings of depression and sadness, and society had said you succeeded. Mm-hmm. Like you had met the expectation. You had checked the boxes. And you checked the boxes, but why aren't you? Yeah. You check the boxes. Like, you're just like, have you found that maybe not use the word reevaluate, but have you started to find ways to redefine things in your life? And if you just kind of give me what are some of the things that you're redefining? Mm-hmm. Obviously success, you've redefined success. And so can you talk to me a little bit about what that looks like? Yeah,
absolutely. I think that was a big one for me, especially after college, redefining success or what it meant to win. And I think I had maybe some competitive nature. And the connection I made even this weekend when we were performing was that I love to compete and achieve because it was one of those spaces where it brought my family together in peace. And so what was I really seeking out of that achievement? And was it survival, as a child, thinking I need to achieve to survive? Or was it this, and also unity, connectedness, like bringing people together? So seeing beyond that, I realized I could achieve those things without needing to strive for anything, just simply by being. So I took a few years just kind of off, just kind of on my own, not really out in the public at all. And I think I found those connection points, and I found that peace, and I found the practices that helped me feel good. But at the end of the day, I knew that I would not feel fulfilled until I was sharing that with the world. And it was really this understanding, which for me, it came with my practice with my hands in the dirt as I worked as a gardener, as a farmer, as a landscaper. And I made these connections between like the patterns of the earth with the patterns of us humans, and that we are all connected. And that the answer is in that idea of unity. When we've been sold this competition, like you are better than others, ideal in America, which isn't true. We're better when we're all working together and looking out for each other, and not trying so hard to differentiate ourselves. So, yeah, it's been a journey.
Any new definitions you've made, Hunter? Any new definitions?
It's,
New Webster editions?
yeah. I think it's, if you can wake up and just be really content, if you're doing something that brings your life meaning, getting up and feeling proud of what you do, of surrounding yourself with people that support you and encourage you. When I was in Nepal, I remember this very distinctly, but one of my first days getting there, the place is rough. The roads are rough. It looks beat down. And for coming from the Western world, it was really shocking.
Not DePaul Greencastle.
Nepal. Yeah. No. Yeah, place. Yeah. Yeah. They have lovely roads out there. Yeah, no. But getting out there, and we went to this little area, and we were going to hike down. And when we were staying up there at sunset, everybody kind of gets off work. So the whole family was out playing badminton together. The kids and the parents, they shut down everything. Everybody comes out to watch the sunset together on this hill. And their house is right there, and it's made of cinder blocks. It's a dirt floor. Maybe there's one mattress, and there's 8 people that live there. You're sleeping with your brothers, sisters, cousins. Everyone is on the floor together there. And I was like, oh, these might be the richest people I've ever met. They were so calm and at peace and happy and spending time together with their family and enjoying nature and being outside, and they didn't have all these worries and concerns, and they weren't distracted. And I think that's when I realized we might have it all wrong. When I got done with being sick, I was looking around. You feel like you got to get back to it. I don't know if you've heard, but cancer is pretty expensive.
Yeah. I have heard. Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah. They really like to milk it. So my savings was all kind of gone. Everything that I worked towards, I was pretty close to losing everything that I had. But I had a house down there and all this, and yeah. So there's this thought of like, oh, you got to get right back to work. You got to make money again. You got to do all this. And when I stopped and looked around at other people that maybe I looked up to, or oh wow, looks like they got a nice job. They got nice clothes and a nice car. Wow, they live in some beautiful place. They get to do all this stuff. And then when I stopped and looked at people, I was like, I don't know anyone that's happy. I couldn't point to anyone and go like, oh, this is a really happy person here. And so that was my big reason for going over there, was just, I'm going to find out how to be happy.
Yeah, I think I know I've that I think that move. I don't know that I think of things as like redefining things, but I definitely new philosophies and ways of thinking about things. And as I age, I am not aging.
Gracefully.
I am not aging like a fine wine. But as I age, I start to consider, is this the right formula?
Yeah.
Like, I think when we're young, time is endless. We have all these opportunities, all these potentials. And I've started like the last couple of years thinking, all right, I'm halfway through the race. If I'm lucky, I'm halfway through the race. And what do I want that second half to look like? And I started asking myself questions like, who am I without my goals? Like, so are my goals who I am? Or is the achievement piece, is that something that I've, manifested on my own? Or is that something I have been taught that this is what is valuable? Who has the most at the end wins. Unfortunately, you're all dead. So it's like, well, that's winning. And so I think too, is this idea of, I think there's always a self-correction at the end somewhere. I always like to talk about, the captains of industry, and it's like, man, they spent like all their lives making this money and just to give it away.
Yeah.
Like,
To have a legacy that they don't get to see.
Or to feel like they made the world somewhat better. It's like, I know I kind of, preyed on all of you, but here's an organ.
Yeah.
Here's a library, even though we, sorry if there's any Carnegie people out there. Those are 2 Carnegie references. But this idea of how do we how do we move away from this idea, the great Western experiment? And the reason I bring it up as an experiment is there are things to be gained from most philosophies in life. I mean, you can gain many things from Western civilization. But the idea of how do we move, and I like that you mentioned the word unity. And this is where I really kind of want to dive into is when we think of how we were raised, how we grew up in our, Midwest America, achieve, 2-car garage, picket fence, house, 2.5 kids. I always wondered what the half kid did. This is like a pair of legs. Yeah. Go to work, raise a family, put a little aside, go to Florida.
Yeah.
Here's your life. Here's your milestones. Are we missing something by not having, well, let me ask you this question. One, what is unity? So that would be the question I would ask is when you think of the word unity, you had mentioned digging in the earth, it aligning with you. What is unity? Like when you think of...
When I think about it, I think about everyone working together,
Okay.
or this idea of being united, where communication lines are open and people are reciprocal in helping each other, rather than putting up these blocks and pretending like there are competition or there are enemy. It's like those walls come down and we're actually communicating and working in unison for the same cause or for the same purpose or greater good. And I think the key in helping make that shift as a Western, as our society is in this like kind of competitive nature, is helping those walls come down and helping people identify what they share in common and realize we're on the same team. Yeah. We're all on the same team. And I think what we've seen the last couple of years with the pandemic has been this universal kind of crisis where it's like the walls have come down and we've seen each other's humanity on a different level. And I think we're even seeing that now going forward with the climate crisis. You think about how we need to work together as a global unit to shift our behaviors and to change. We need to work together in order to overcome what could potentially be a massive disaster. So my hope is that in that sense of urgency, people will feel the call to shift.
I think there was such a powerful thing for me of going through cancer. You get this luxury of what I call like grandma wisdom. Okay. This end of life wisdom where you really are looking at like, oh, it might be the end of the road for me. Reflecting on your life and what you wanted to accomplish, and was this a life that you ultimately wanted to live? I think that's such a luxury to get at a young age, if you can look at it that way. Of course, it super sucks, but there's also this wisdom that you get from it, and that's really, really wonderful. So I got the opportunity to change things afterwards. And there's this competitive nature that we have as human beings, especially in the West, of you have to do everything and you have to be good at everything, and if you're not, you're a failure. You have to be able to make money, manage money, take care of your body. You have to learn your social circles. You have to everything. You are 100% in charge of everything that you're supposed to do, where the way that humans have lived for so long before this was in this community space. So there are people that are more nurturing, and so they're in nurturing positions. That's what they're genuinely guided to. I think we talked about this at the talk upstairs of just there are people that are built to be at the top of the hill and guard the community from others. We've got warriors that are amongst us. And so these people need to use their skills and their natural inclinations and understand you're not supposed to have 100% of everything. We always feel like we're a failure if we're not perfect at everything, but you're not supposed to be. That's why no one has 100% of everything. I've never met anyone that's good at everything and really has everything together, because we're supposed to work together. I'll do your taxes, you grow me some food. I'm better with numbers, you're better with the soil. And everybody should work together in a way, and then we're one complete unit together. But here we're taught everything is on you.
You're in a silo.
You are everything. You've got to do it all. And I think that's where we feel a lot of disconnect, and where we feel kind of hard on each other of, or you grow into a family that has a family business. You're from a line of doctors, you're from whatever, and you're supposed to do it. You're like, but I just want to dance, like.
I want to be on camera.
Yeah, I just want to dance, like. Yeah, this is not for surgery. It's for jazz hands, like that's what this is for. Like, and that's okay, and you should be able to do that, and there should be a space for that. And there's people that are built to be entertainers, and there's other people that are like, please don't make me speak in front of me when I want to throw up. My inside of my body is throwing up.
I'm just like I don't know if you guys, what was the cheerleading movie? Bring It On. Yeah. I don't know why I know that, but the guy's like with the jazz fingers. I find it interesting, and I think we could have a whole variety of segments just on, the way we go about existing in our culture and our structure. And I find it interesting that you're like, well, not everyone is meant to master everything. But in our culture, it's like, no, I'm supposed to master everything. And if I don't, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't live up to my potential, it's not because I don't actually have potential in that particular thing. It's because someone has either taken it from me, prevented it, or created an obstacle.
I would have been there if it wasn't for such and such or whatever. Yeah. I always look at it as the common denominator of all my failures is me. I'm involved in everything that sucks in my life. So either I can go around and try to change everyone else around me and be really, really exhausted and frustrated, or maybe it's time for me to look at myself. And maybe I've got something to do with the situation that I'm in, and that maybe it's not my fault, but it is my responsibility now to deal with it. And I think that's what the purpose of life is, to an extent, is this is what you're good at, this is what you are fine at, and this is what you're really, really horrible at. Make it work. Figure out you've got stuff to deal with, and have this experience and learn and grow and struggle and succeed and do all these things, and then you've experienced life, you've done it all. And I get really concerned with comfort. I think comfort kills. More than hard times, more than struggle, more than pain. I think comfort is what really, really hurts us as a society. And not to say that comfort is bad, but you give someone a decent salary and benefits and something very cushy, it's hard to leave that. It's hard to leave the safety of that to get out and experience things. And if I had like a genie and I could give one gift, would be for people to have some time to not do anything. That you are here to experience this. You're not just here to survive and make money and work for 60 years so you can then buy a Corvette and an apartment in Florida. That doesn't make sense to me. You have this whole life to experience and get out and do it, but comfort will stop you from doing those things. This fear of the unknown, this fear of, well, what if I don't have these things or all that? And the things that you own end up owning you. And then you miss out on so much of life. And then at the end of your life, you're looking around and you're like, well, I've got these things that I now have to give to someone else. And
the RV still has a good resale value.
But I never got to see the Eiffel Tower. I never got to go experience these things. I never got to hike this trail. I never got to do these things because I was so worried about making sure I didn't lose these things.
Living in fear.
Yeah, I think a huge benefit for me was getting to lose a lot of things.
Yeah, I come back to that. I always come back to that idea of, you're always, hindsight's always 20/20. When you look back on like, what should I have done? How should I have maybe structured my life? I think there's this idea of, and I'm going back to even things that you're fashioned for, like things that you are fashioned to do versus things you're not. Like, I always tell my students, I'm like, I have very limited skills. I would not be of any use in a zombie apocalypse because I'm a doctor, but not really a doctor. Like,
he's bleeding. You're like, I'm not that kind of. Yeah, I can talk about your emotional stress if you're bleeding. Yeah.
I can ask you how you feel about
It's really
the
hard,
leg.
isn't it? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
And so it's like finding where you fit, and what influence you can have, how you can make things better. But I think too is you do go back to that idea of, to make things better, you have to go through a period of where things aren't going well. Like there's, if you want to think about, well, how do I get to comfort, is generally, I think of it as this, is that we put ourselves in these very uncomfortable situations because I believe there's a better state of comfort. Like, I'm comfortable, life's going well, my bills are paid, my kids have what they need, my house is okay. It's like, ooh, but if I do this, it's gonna be so much more comfortable over there.
Grass is always
And
greener.
and it's like you just get in this like compulsive behavior of doing more and doing more and doing more. And one of the things that brought you guys to the my coffee events, and I'm so happy that you guys come to those. Many of my friends I make really good coffee, by the way. In case you guys out there, I make really good coffee. And someone asked me, well, have you ever thought about selling it? And I'm like, the moment I sell it, it no longer is what it is. It's now became a commodity or something that loses its purity. It's like, I just want it to exist without making it corporate, I guess. And going back to kind of that consumer behavior is and I think too is like, I always, I teach sociology, so I'm always asking my students, is society driven by capitalists or is it driven by consumers? Because capitalists tend to give the consumer what they want.
Yeah, and I think it's time, and we talk a lot about this too, like I want to help consumers take their power back. And that's part of some of our work too, is helping people be more conscious about who they're supporting with their dollar and seeing the whole process, cradle to grave, like where are these products coming from and where do they end up? Like we need to see the whole picture.
We miss out on that a lot. We think if we make a Facebook post about what we like, we vote every 4 years, that's where we really get to speak our mind and present change, but it's how you spend your dollar every day. If we really look at the world, it's money makes it go around, and that's really is what speaks to change. If, you look at it now, people are they want oat milk and they want these things.
They do like oat milk.
They do, yeah. I had a friend that said I've had more pressure to drink oat milk than I ever had for doing drugs. Yeah, it's like dare was completely wrong. Like,
You're drinking dairy?
From a cow, you psycho? Yeah, yeah.
I have an almond intolerance. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but
I'm sure. But yeah.
I think too is that's the idea of pressure, the pressure that we have. A lot of people, pressure. I remember growing up, like pressure, builds diamonds, and I'm like, well, it also crushes cars. Yeah. So there needs to be somewhat of a balance of how we go about applying pressure. And I think too, going back to with the pandemic and all of these things that we've, like, part of me is like, we were so hurt. I feel like we learned nothing at times. I really feel like, and I'm not talking about the illness or the virus, but that we were forced into a place of contemplation. Like one of the benefits I have a 7-year-old. I got to spend 2.5 years of uninterrupted time with my 7-year-old, and I could not wait to get back to how it was before. And it's like, and you have to kind of like I think you have to kind of talk with yourself about that a lot. Like, what's this thing? What I want this thing to look like? And I think I would say your grandmother wisdom is what you called it. I would feel like you got a lifetime of wisdom in a matter of weeks.
You get it really quick. Well, and looking with COVID and all these things and the way things have changed, and having this perspective that I have of really being able to remove myself from society and look at it. When you're sick like that, you're not a part of society. You're really just a burden. And so because you're not involved with things, you're not a decision maker, you're not really a consumer other than what you kind of have to do. You're taken out of things. You get a different look at stuff. And I think I can still kind of see things from that lens. When you watch COVID, it's hard for me to understand how people don't see it of like, when we're divided, we don't do well as a species. And you can get online, it's that like dogs through a fence will bark and go crazy, want to tear each other up, and then you remove the fence and they're sniffing each other's butts and they're totally fine. And that's what you see now is when we separate people, we would all just be sniffing each other's butts. All right, look, don't throw me off of my thoughts. I got things that I'm doing here, people. But if you remove people from each other and then you throw in fear and anxieties and all these things, and then you have people that come up with a different lens, and we end up barking at each other and going nuts and thinking the other side is the problem instead of figuring out how we can do this together. And then we miss the entire point. And we're much more malleable and impressionable when we're angry and scared. And I think sometimes we can't see the trees from the forest kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like that idea. I think I love the fence thing. Because not the second half of that. So I think there's a future in a T-shirt for that. By the way, put the fence down and no. But the idea of this in regards to when I was growing up, there was a thing referred to as a telephone tough guy, where you were ruler of the world as long as it wasn't in person. I feel that we've moved to this keyboard tough guy kind of society where I don't want to share my opinion with you until I'm here. And so this idea, we just keep pushing. We don't want that fence I think at times we don't want that fence to come down, and going back to, well, what am I without that fence? What am I without my frustration? What am I without this problem? And I think too is that's the idea of getting back to, I guess, a place of, is this making my life better? Like, that's a big question. I ask myself too. As a field, I tend to study problems, and I'm like, is my behavior making my life better?
But even having that thought is such a luxury.
Yeah.
It really is. And that's why I say if I could gift anything to anybody, it would be like just a year of doing nothing and looking at stuff. Because then you get to see these patterns and you notice these things, and how am I showing up? What energy am I holding? What have I done to take care of myself? But like I said, if you're not meeting your basic needs, if you're concerned about keeping the lights on or your house warm, or feeding your family, you can't think about that next level of, you're in survival mode. You're not thinking about what nutrition am I getting in? What's the quality of sleep? How am I responding to these things? Am I fueling my body? Am I actually doing what I want? You're just trying to make it to the next day. And that's a really long life if you're just continuously trying to make it to the next day for all your years.
And I think this takes me back to when you pose that idea of like, do you want to work for the industry or change the industry? And I think what has happened with Hunter and I in the last year has really been trying to create a business where we can change the industry and offer a new service, a different type of service that can really help remedy these problems by distilling down this information that people need that are in survival mode, that are just trying to keep their head above water, and giving them exactly the tools and the information they need to feel better and to take control of their lives. And we're here to shake up the industry.
Yeah, I know when I invited you guys, I had invited you and a couple other organizations that aren't typically part of the, mental health world. Is that the idea is that if we don't get all the entrees onto the table, well, what if there's nothing here that I want to eat? Or are the things that are on the table good for me? And I think that, especially in our crisis, and I know we're going to have to wrap it up, but this idea of that, I think that there's this desire to get back to some of the simpler things. There's just, I don't know how to get there. I don't know how to give up those golden handcuffs. I don't know how to walk away from my comfortable life because if I, or whatever it is. And like I said, I think that's something that we can definitely, jump into in our next segment. One of the things I would like to, we have just a few minutes. I'd like to kind of open it up to you guys if there's anything that you would like to, advice you would like to give our viewers or listeners, and then we will wrap up with our conclusion. So it's all yours.
Do you want me to begin, or do you want to? Okay. I guess that the last thing I'd want to share is just kind of what we're here for exactly and how we can help you. If you're watching or if you're listening and maybe you resonate with some of this conversation, Hunter and I are really here just to help equip you with the skills and tools that you need to navigate today's world, whether that's mindset training just to get your mind right and kind of overcome some of the evolutionary patterns that can be really maladaptive, like the false alarm when our nervous system gets overstimulated and we have that intense response. Also nervous system regulation that takes us there through the breath work. We're working a lot with somatic movement practices to help you become embodied and really tune into the wisdom that your body has to offer every day, and nutrition education so you can really understand how to nourish your body and your mind so you can function at your highest level. So yeah, we're here for that. We can work in we work privately, coaching, we work in small groups, we can come into your business or your school. That's some discussion we can get into more later. Awesome. But yeah, I just want you guys to know that we're here for you.
And for me, I think we are a culmination of a million small decisions. So our habits are things that we do consistently make us who we are. And we have this society where we go, I don't like this, give me a pill, so I'm done with this now, and we're over it. But that's not how things work. So what we try to do is to give these people skills, these daily habits, this way of looking at things, of taking care of yourself, that if you put effort and thought into these things, that you're going to reap the reward of it. I don't feel like I am any better than I ever was. It's just now I know how to manage certain things or certain reactions. I'm much more aware of my tendencies or things that are in my lineage. My family do this, or I was taught this thing, and this is how I react, and this is my natural composure, all this. Well, how do I make that into an enjoyable life and work with the cards that I have? Again, it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility to figure out. And what I've noticed consistently is my day is won or lost in the first hour after I wake up. And if I consistently do those things every day to take care of myself, to check in, to slow down, to move my body, to express myself, then when I'm faced with other things, other challenges, mental, emotional, physical, whatever it is, I can meet that correctly instead of having it kind of wreck me. And so that's what we're here to do, is to give people these skills of these little things, and then you can do whatever you want with it. It enhances every other program that's there. It's not like we're in, I don't really see us in competition with anyone else. We're here to all come together and figure out what works to get people feeling better. And I think that we can enhance things that are already in motion, and we all got to work towards the same goal of healing and being healthy and happy and working together. Yeah, and that's what gets us excited, and that thought of that ripple effect going forward is what gets us up every day. It's the last thing we think about before we go to sleep at night. I have to tell Hannah to go and write it down. I need a mental break. She gets all these ideas at like 10 o'clock at night. Go put that stuff somewhere. Yeah, because it's all we think about. It's our whole day of how we can help and make people's lives better.
Yeah, and I like the way, like I said, I'm not. We're going to end on this, but I like the way you mentioned kind of the way when I hear you talk and the way I kind of think about what we have here in the mental health world and the things that you're bringing, is you're not trying to give. I don't feel like you're trying to give people a new car. You're trying to give them new accessories for the car. That obviously this isn't going to be the end all everything that you need, but this may provide you some other benefits to go along with, what you're trying to accomplish as a person, or so on.
Yeah, we're teaching them how to maintain that car.
Yeah, how do you do oil changes, right? Yeah. All right, well, excellent. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. This is the Dr.